So Elad, you have invested, I think, in some of the most iconic companies of the last decade, and then you've, Color has had a really outstanding round of financing, lot of excitement around this. We'd love to know how you started your journey in both tech investing as well as technology. So how did you start?
Sure, yeah. So I moved out here after getting my PhD at MIT. I did a PhD in biology, so it was very weird to try and go into the technology sector. And I moved out here, and I basically begged my way into a job at a telecom equipment company. At the time, telecom equipment was sort of one of the big trends.
And this was 99, 2000?
No, this was 2001.
2001.
And so I came at exactly the wrong time. So I arrived right as the entire internet bubble was collapsing, the telecom equipment bubble was collapsing. And I joined a company at about 120 people, like grew to 150, and then it shrank to about 15 people over 5 rounds of layoffs. So I got laid off in the third round of funding. And when I got laid off, I was introduced into Sequoia through the CEO. So he thought I did a really good job at the company, and so introduced me to his board members. And so through that, I met a few people on the Sequoia team. They eventually ended up introducing me to Google, and then I joined Google as a product manager, initially starting up the mobile team. So I helped by Android, I helped pull together the initial teams for Google Mobile Maps and Mobile Gmail, and then I switched onto the ad side and then left to start a company that was eventually acquired by Twitter. It was a very early developer infrastructure company, and so then I worked at Twitter as a vice president, basically.
That's Mixer Labs.
That was Mixer Labs, yeah, exactly.
Great.
So yeah. So I was at Twitter for a couple years, and my job really became one of helping to scale the company. And so I got involved with user growth and analytics, with helping to scale some of the recruiting functions. The M&A team worked for me for a while, and I was involved with opening the Japan market, with internationalization. So there's a lot of different things that Dick, the CEO at the time, asked me to get involved with to help take the company from 90 people to 1,500 or so.
Wow. And Twitter has done a lot of really substantive work on the infrastructure and API side. So I assume you were involved in all of those. So.
I was involved a little bit. At that point, I'd sort of switched out of the product org and much more into the almost like business operations scaling side of the world. And so I started off in product there, but then very quickly it became evident that there was a need to have a function that could help support sort of the high growth of the company.
Great. And tell us a little about Color. So there's a lot of excitement around Color, and you have some of the, it's a kind of a beauty contest of VCs trying to invest with you.
Yeah, we've been very lucky in terms of the people who've gotten involved with Color. And so Color is a low-cost genetic test for the 8 most common types of hereditary cancer. So we've tried to take products that normally cost many thousands of dollars and use software to drop the cost down to just $250. So suddenly people can have access to testing for genes like BRCA1 and 2 and other genes that will most impact their risk of developing cancer. We are very lucky to be backed by great folks like Joe Lonsdale at 8.VC, Vinod Khosla at Khosla Ventures, and then Hemant at General Catalyst. So we've been very pleased with the set of institutional investors who've gotten involved. And then, of course, we have a really amazing set of angels who we're very excited to be working with.
What informs your investment decision? And not to kind of box you in, but when I look at kind of angel investors, you have almost like a benchmark-like skill of being very surgical in the things that you do, and they turn out to be very, very well. So what informs your your investment
Sure,
thesis?
Yeah. It's going to sound very generic.
Okay.
I think that I look for 3 things. Number one, the market. So I think most early stage investors, especially angels or sort of angel funds, tend to be much more founder driven than market driven. They'll say, we just want to find great people and we're going to back them. I actually believe that a great team in a terrible market will fail most of the time. In part because when teams tend to pivot, they tend to pivot within the market they're already in instead of looking for a new market. And so you just get trapped in something that's just terrible and that you're never going to win at. So number one is market. Number two, obviously, is founder. So is it actually a good initial starting team? Because that sets the whole culture up. And then lastly, it's a bit more around personality and will I get along with them? If they call me at 11 o'clock at night on a Saturday, will I want to pick up the phone or help them in the middle of the night? And so this has literally happened to me where, for example, when the founders of Stripe were doing their first acquisition. They literally called me at 10 o'clock on a Saturday and said, "Hey, can you meet us for a beer, a glass of wine? We're trying to think through this acquisition." And so I, jumped in a car and headed over to meet with them and sort of worked with them on, how do you make a bid on a company and how do you go through that process.